Alright, welcome back to Plastic Models by Regular Dude and Plastic Models for Beginners. Back to basics, the Tamiya 6x6 2.5 ton cargo truck. So we left off on step 5 last time, which was the fuel tank, brake drums, etc. So now it's on to 6 and the driveline. So the main parts are B21, which is this whole assembly here, which is pretty dandy, which means there's not a lot of lengthy pieces to assemble and make sure they're aligned properly and all that kind of business. Which can be fun at times sometimes, but for the beginning modeler, sometimes this way is better. So being a nice long piece of plastic here, there's going to be a lot of mold parting lines to deal with. So since I've done it on so many other parts so far of this type, I am not going to submit you to the torture of watching me clean these up. So I'll clean them up real quick and then come back for the rest of the parts. All right, now that the driveline and everything is completed, now it's time to put it on the chassis. So just like it did that. Alright, so I'm going to start with the center here, and I'm going to, woohoo! Apply the cement through these right there. Transfer case. Okay, then we got a connection point right here where the drive line connects to the transmission. Whoops. All right, so then we'll do this part here. Front axle. Hold that there for a minute. Okay. And we'll do this side here. That one there. that one there. Okay, I'm going to clamp this one right here because it keeps springing open. So let's see if I can do it. It's one of these. Nah. The old school clothespins here. That one. And that one. So we'll let that dry up. These up here are fine. Okay. So I got those. Now we need to get, while those are drying, get B25. Since that part's exposed, I'll make sure I get the mold parting line. Smoothed out. And that goes right there. Okay, and let's check these. And let that sit a little bit longer. That one seems to be not sticking all that great, so I'm going to let it cure up really good. So while that is setting up some more, let's see, I'm going to cut off these two A28s and B28. So I'm going to cut those off and start cleaning them up and then come back. Alright, so this is all dry now. So what I did is looking down, I wanted to make sure that these axles were lined up, because one was a little bit higher than, like this one was higher than this one, and you really want to make sure those are as even as possible, because you have a little bit of play in the wheels, so you make sure it sits level, but you don't want one wheel floating up in the air. So all I did, now that everything was cured up really well, is I just gave it a twist like this a few times until the axles lined up. So looking down, the axles are lined up, and it's kind of hard to see with my thumbs in the way, but the axles are lined up really well. They're level, parallel to each other. So with that, I can move on to the rest of these parts here. So we've got both of the A28s. Thought I had them cleaned up good enough, but now looking at it in different reflection of light, the screw gates weren't quite cleaned up. Okay, there we go. That one's good. That one's good. That was good. All right. So You just want to make sure you got them going the right way. So these circular parts face out, this faces in, and fits right there like that. So since this is like the anchor point, I'm going to do this first before I cement the other part. So we'll get that in there like that. And then this one, whoops, on here like this. That set up for a second, and then this cross member here goes down into here on both sides. So I'll use my tweezers. Drop it right down like that. Get a dab of cement. Both sides. Make sure it's in place. Alright, so this other part's good enough, so I'll go ahead and cement those. Hold that in place there. One side seems kind of off a little bit. Then do these. Hold those in place for a minute. So I'm going to let those cure up, and then we'll be ready to move on to step 8, which is the wheels. And before I get too crazy here, I almost forgot B36. So we'll clip that one off. That's the tie rod for the front, and I almost forgot that, and that's pretty important because you can't steer a vehicle without that there tie rod. So let's clip those off. Like that. So I'll get that glued on, and then we can move on to step number 8. So let me just put a little bit of cement on here, there, and there. Whoops, there. Give it a squeeze with the old tweezers. And voila. Okay, so that takes care of steps 6 and 7. So, ready to move on to step 8. Alright, for the wheels, we've got front wheels, which is A11 or A19, a pre-made drum, and one of these poly caps. So I've cut an A11 and A19 off. Got those parts ready, so I'm going to clip this off nice and close. Whoops. Now these you don't have to worry about cleaning up right now because we're going to be doing some sanding around the edge. So sleeve goes in A19 like that. Then the drum goes like that. And then A11, after you line up the locating pins, goes like that. Okay, so just take your cement, and what I like to do is when I'm putting together parts like this, hopefully you can see there, I don't squeeze it real tight so there's a little bit of a gap so the cement will really pull in and flow all through that seam, that joint. So it just sucks right through there. That way you get a nice, if you watch, it's not going to puddle up. It's just going to pull right in there, right off the tip of this thing. See that? And you squeeze that tight. Clamp it if you need to, but I don't think it'll really be necessary to clamp it. Hold it for a few seconds. Give it a good squeeze, and that'll push some of the plastic that's melted from the Tamiya extra thin. It'll squeeze some of that out, and that way you know it's filling in that seam really well. And you let it cure up really good, then we'll be able to sand that or scrape it off so you get a real nice smooth spot right there in the center. Okay, so I got to do another one of those, then I have to do the spare, and then the rear wheels, which is just an A10 and A11. And then A17 and A11 with another sleeve and another hub to make up the dual wheels for the rear axle. So I'm going to put all those wheels together and then come back. Okay, excuse me. All of the wheels have been glued together, but I need to let them cure really well before I start trying to sand the edges. So I'm going to keep those off to the side, and in the meantime, I'm going to skip up to step 9, which is attaching the wheels, and then attaching some of the other small parts. So what I'm going to do here is start cutting these parts off. So we'll start with B23. Which is a kind of a cross brace kind of thing. And something to take note of, it shows you here what to do if you're using for removed wheel attached brake drum as shown. So you could attach the brake drum on one of those rear axles if you wanted to show it, like, you know, changing a flat or being repaired or whatever, which is kind of a nice touch. If you're wanting to do a diorama with something like that on it, it's already got the stuff built in, so that's kind of cool. So this one goes right here. So I'm gonna do this one from the inside like that. Thusly, all right, then we got B27, which is the toe pintle on the back. Have to do a little bit of cleanup on that for the parting seams. Again, just using the edge of the blade to get down in there and get all those. Sorry, I keep bumping the camera with my noggin. Get that nice and cleaned up because it does protrude out a bit, so it's gonna get some weathering going on. All right, so that goes there like that, so that fits in there nicely. So get that in place. Looks pretty jolly. All right, so then next up we have the fuel tank, which is here, and that goes right there like that. So in this case, since there's a place for this to pull up a little bit, I'm going to put some cement inside of there where it contacts, so I can set it in place. Make sure it's bottomed out. Hold it for a second. And then apply a little bit more on the bottom here, just to make sure it's on there nice and solid. There's nothing worse than being painting or weathering and having parts pop off. And on some weathering, depending on what you're using to do your weathering, you can have a problem. There's a nasty old greasy fingerprint there. If you're not careful, some of the solvents used during the weathering and painting process can, if it's just a small, delicate piece, or it's just not, doesn't have much surface area, the solvents can dissolve your joint. So then we've got the battery box here, and it's only going to fit one way because the locating pins and then some support pins there. Get that attached. And that takes care of the extra parts on here. So I'm going to go and take a look and see how the wheels are doing. Alright, so I got all the wheels sanded up and they're ready to go. So now all I need to do is glue the dually wheels together, and once I do that, step 8 will be done. Now for these wheels, since I can't get in there with the brush on that, with the Tamiya extra thin, I'm going to use my Tester's Model Master liquid because it's a little bit thicker. It's more like a gel stuff, and a lot of people like to use this stuff. They'll brush it on and put the parts together, but sometimes, you know, for me, if I don't get it together quick enough, it starts to cure before it sticks together, and it just doesn't seem to stick as good. So I like to use this in cases like this. And run my nozzle cleaner through here and make sure that's cleared out, because there's nothing worse than having a big old blob of that stuff come flying out once it breaks through. There we go. Just give it a little wiggle like that, and then set it aside flat. Make sure it dries good. So any of my friends from the Europe / England areas, after seeing this stuff in action, is that about what the Revell Contacta or whatever it's called, is that about the consistency of it? Kind of a thick liquid? Just curious, because I've never even seen this stuff except in videos. Alright, so that finishes step 8. And I got step 9 done with the fuel tank, the battery, and the wheels are done, but I'm not going to put those on yet. So that finishes step 9 and pretty much finishes the chassis part of the build. So the next part is step 10, which starts on the cab. So I'm going to stop this video here so it doesn't get too long, and come back next time and start on part 10, or step 10. So as always, thanks for joining me here. Questions, comments down below. If anybody can answer that Revell glue question, I'd appreciate it. And so that's it for now. So until next time, I will see you all later.